Johnny.
Ready?
I'm ready. Okay.
Hello! Welcome to Buzzin' with Cousin. I'm your host, Cousin Johnny. How's everybody doing out there? We have a great show planned. I've got a great guest, but I'd like to thank our sponsor, Chris Spencer of Max Fit Market, 520 Fremont Street, for your nutritional needs and grab and go healthy meals. Believe me, those meals are great. You're on the run, grab them, take them home, heat them up, and you've got yourself a great meal. Okay, before further ado, I'd like to introduce a very special guest, friend of mine, and really happy to have her on the show. She's a disciple of the Escoffier International. She's the founder of the La Dame Escoffier.
That's right.
She's on the board of the American Institute of Wine and Food. And before further ado, let me introduce chef, author,
Yes.
Mary Chamberlain,
And you could say traveler.
and traveler.
Yes.
And wait a minute, one thing I'd like to say, and fundraiser, because Mary, we thank you for what you do in this community, raising money for different organizations, and that's really great.
Well, Rancho Ciel is one of our big fundraising that we like to work for.
Thank you, and I welcome you to this show. So, Mary, where are you from, and how did you end up in Monterey?
Okay. Boy, that's a big question. But first of all, I was born on a farm in Illinois.
Okay.
And I was going to say that how did I get all the way to California? Well, my father was a farmer, an educated farmer,
Okay.
and my mother was a nurse. They met at the local Methodist church and got married, and they had their first set of twins, which I happened to be one of them. And I started out as a blue baby. Do you know what that is? Well, anyway.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah, so I started out that way, but it didn't last long, believe me. And my whole life has been, I would say, always meeting different needs, which you will find out when I talk about it, special needs.
Yes.
I went from Illinois to Indiana. From Indiana, we moved to California, Castro Valley. From Castro Valley,
Yeah.
we actually made our home there, and that's when I started becoming interested in food. And when I was in school, in high school,
Yeah.
everybody would gather around my stove in the home economics class,
Yes.
waiting for me to finish what I was cooking because they wanted to eat it.
Oh, that sounds good, yeah.
So I got an A in cooking.
Perfect.
Well, it was a sewing class I took. And when I decided my senior year in high school that I had enough credits to go to school a half a day and work a half a day, which I wanted to do because I could use the money, they said, well, you had an F on your grades, you can't do that. So the cooking teacher, I told her about it, and she said, oh, we can take care of that. So they went to the sewing teacher, and you know what they said? She said, you're gonna have to change Mary's grade.
Okay, yeah.
And she said, well, she got an F because she can't sew. And she said, well, she's such a good cook, you have to give her an A. And so that's how I was able to go to school every day and work.
Perfect.
But I think my life drastically changed for me because I went on and became an executive secretary to the vice president of a major firm.
Okay.
And that's back when you did typing and shorthand and all this sort of thing. And so I was married and had 2 children and very happily working with this company. And my brother Marshall was with the American Embassy in Paris, and he married, or was getting married to President de Gaulle's goddaughter. And so you can imagine what happened. I needed to go over for the wedding.
Oh, yeah.
Because that would be I'd never been to Paris, I'd never been out of the country.
Perfect, yeah.
So I borrowed the money and I went to Paris for the wedding. And it was my first time in Paris, and I can still remember going out to dinner and tasting that food, and I could not believe it was so delicious. And tasting the bread, and I was saying, this is the most wonderful thing I've ever had happen to me in the world. And I was already making notes in my book of all the things that I was eating and where I was eating and so forth. And I can still remember this. We were sitting there with my brother's father-in-law, Dr. Villiers, and they brought out a plate of cheese. And so my brother's trying to help me with the cheese, and he'd say, "Don't eat that."
Yeah.
He says, "It's aged in manure." And Dr. Villiers heard him say that, and he said, "Marshall, you are right."
Yeah.
But after all life is a process of decay.
Oh, perfect.
I ate the cheese and I loved it.
Yeah,
But
sounds good to me.
anyway, the day after this beautiful wedding, which was at the Crillon, the reception, and at the English Embassy Church in Paris, my brother's best friend said, "I will take Mary on a tour into the south of France." And I wanted to see where Jeanne d'Arc was. I wanted to see all these different things. And so he agreed to take me. And on the way back that night to Paris, he fell asleep at the wheel of the car, and we went down a 30-foot embankment, and I was in a terrible automobile accident.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
And I was unconscious 10 days, and in a French hospital for 3 months, and in and out of hospitals for the next 2 years. I had my right arm was almost severed, and my left hand, all the tendons and nerves were severed. Now, this changed my life because I couldn't type.
Oh, got it, yeah.
And so I had no feeling in my fingers. And so I said, "What am I going to do? I can no longer work as a secretary." And I said, "What do I do best? Cook."
Yeah, that's your passion.
That's what so you know what I did? I went to West Valley College and enrolled in their culinary program.
All right.
And after I graduated from that, I opened my own business, and it was called Mission Delicatessen and Catering.
Oh, wow, Mission.
And it was right across from Maloney College, and I had all these people that just came and wanted to help me. So the inside of the building that I rented, we made it look like it had arbor and redwood over it, and all the tables were redwood
Yeah.
And they were modeled after the mission churches, the
Okay.
tables.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so it's so beautiful inside, all redwood.
Wow, sounds great.
And wine barrels. So it was very rustic, and I made several promises about that. I said to God that if I open this business, there's several things that I'm committing to. Number one, I will never have my business open on Sunday. I may have to cater, but the business itself will never be open on Sunday.
Yeah.
The second thing I promised God was that, and myself, that everything would always be homemade. We would never buy in pre-made products. And so the third thing that I promised was that anybody could come in and eat for $1. So that's really how my soup book came about, because we had a homemade soup every day in the restaurant in Delicatessen, and people could come in and they could get, because the location was right across from Maloney College, I had this little small sandwich we made, and it was called the Ohlone Special, and it was 95 cents, and you could get it with a homemade salad or a cup of soup. Now, in 20 years, I never changed the price on that sandwich. Anybody could come in and eat for $1.
Ohlone Special. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, as time went on, by that time I had divorced my husband, and I was single, and I was also asked to teach at the college. So I started a class in international restaurant cuisine, which I taught for 20 years there, one class a semester. And it was always filled with everybody, and I held the classes in my preparation department at the deli. So
okay, yeah.
because I had professional equipment and it could be done. So the classes were always filled with people from everywhere. And as it turned out, that's how I met my second husband, Captain Mary Chamberlain. And he was donating his time at the college to young pilots who were or young men who were studying to be pilots, and he would take time out and come and work with them. And his professor was a female and a good friend of mine, and she introduced us.
Beautiful. That was nice.
So
nice
it kind
story.
of, that's
you
how
had something in common. He was a giving person, and so were you.
it was. And so, you know, that was, we started traveling because he knew how much I loved to travel. And one of the places that we located on our very first trip was to North Wales. And my background, I had a Welsh in my family, and I always wanted to go to Wales. And so we found this little place called the Porthtochen Hotel in Abersoch, Wales. And so we went there to stay, and I have to tell you, it was the most wonderful experience, and they had all these wonderful homemade items and homemade soups and all the kinds of things that I believed in. And as a result, we went there I've been there 28 times, but that changed my life as far as what goes on. So on October 31st in 1993, was it 90? Anyway, it was in the 90s.
Yeah.
We were sitting in the hotel room, and it was on the day before, actually the day before Halloween. And the phone rang. And on the phone was the president of the James Beard Foundation. And he said, "Mary, where are you? What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm in North Wales." And he said, "Well, you need to be in New York tomorrow." And I said, "Why?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Well," he said, "Escoffier is coming here with his wife, and they're going to be guests of the Beard Foundation, and I want you and Roy here, and I'm going to seat you beside Michelle and his wife."
Wow, what an honor.
And he said, "Because I think you should meet him." And I said, "I'm already packed."
Yeah.
So my husband, he was so wonderful. He managed to get us a flight over to,
Oh, yeah.
from London over to Paris. And from Paris, we flew back and landed in New York at 3:00 in the afternoon, something like that. And at 6 that evening in New York, we're seated next to Michelle
Wow.
and his wife.
What a thrill.
And thus began a lifetime of appreciation.
For food.
Yes, for food. And we ended up going to, well, as you know, the Escoffier Museum is in a little village called Villeneuve-Loubet, which is in the south of France. And we went there, of course, and just fell in love with the area. And then we went on to become such good friends that he would come here every year and visit. And then suddenly there was some people that were following Michelle about opening the Escoffier schools here in the United States.
Okay, one of the most prestigious schools in the world.
Yes, it is. And so they started talking to Michelle, and Michelle would talk to me about it. And I'm always kind of proud about this story because it turned out that Michelle and Jack Larson, who founded the Augusta Escoffier Schools of Culinary Arts, they came to my house for dinner.
Wow.
And Jack had with him the contract. And so I planned this beautiful, beautiful dinner, and Michelle is there, and they were going to ask Michelle to sign the contract for the Escoffier schools so that they could start the schools. And
wow.
well, I want to tell you that he was him and hawing around, and I said, "Michelle, sign it and let's get going here."
That's it, yeah.
And everybody laughed, you know.
Perfect.
And he signed the contract, and thus the Escoffier schools were signed at my table, and that was the beginning of the Escoffier schools.
Now, Mary, the disciples of Escoffier.
Now, how did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, can you explain what it is and how it came about for our listeners?
Well,
I know it's a very
most
prestigious.
people would not realize that there are over 33,000 disciples of Escoffier throughout the world. And the United States has very few. But anywhere you go, anywhere in the world, people in very fine restaurants and so forth understand and know about the disciples of Escoffier. And it's a very high honor to be invited into the organization. The business office is located in Villeneuve-Loubet at the Escoffier schools, at the Escoffier Museum and Foundation. Now, most people would not know this, but the museum and foundation that's in this little village. If you were to go to Paris and understand that they have a list of places frequently visited by tourists from around the world,
Yeah.
number 5 on the list is the Escoffier Museum
Wow.
and Foundation. So people, you know, they don't realize the importance of this little tiny place. Now, I always like to tell this story because Escoffier, that was his father's home, and Auguste Escoffier's home. And when you look at it, he was a little boy, and they actually have the little stove that he cooked at, and a little stool that he used to stand on when he cooked. And in all of the schools, they have the 2 Escoffier brick and mortar schools here. One is in I'm going to say out of Denver, and actually in north of Denver, I can't say it all of a sudden. In the let's see, there's Denver, and then there's one in Texas. And so both schools have the little stoves in them.
Oh, really? Do yeah.
Yeah, they have both.
Like a tribute, kind of like.
Yeah, it's a tribute, and it's a exact model of the little
that's
stove
great, yeah.
and the little stool. But it's kind of special. One of the things that I might bring out, Jack Larson was a brilliant man, and about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe 9, he decided to do online education. If you know, and people said, you can't teach cooking online.
Yeah.
And they all thought they laughed at him. Everybody thought it was crazy. But they went ahead and they put in an online school, as well as the 2 brick and mortar schools. Well, I have to say, what happened when this pandemic hit?
Oh yeah.
Not any of their students lost any time at all. Those in the brick and mortar schools went online to finish their education, and they had over, I think, around 7,000. That may have been even much more than that in the schools. But it's very, very interesting to see, and I'm on the board for the Escoffier schools, and
Great, congratulations on
and
that.
so we stay very busy. But that's another part of Escoffier and his life. But then the concept of bringing the disciples to the United States came about with the fact that Michelle started coming to the United States, and we did. The 28th of October is Escoffier's birthday.
That's my birthday.
That's your birthday?
October 28th.
Oh my gosh! Well, no wonder
we're going to celebrate it with me, you, and Michelle.
Absolutely.
Escoffier.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, October 28th. Yeah.
Well,
beautiful. I won't forget it.
Well, as a result, he comes over every year, and whether it's October, because they have a huge event also in Europe for the birthday. And this past year was the 100 and I'm trying to say, I think the 150th anniversary. I'd have to think a minute about it, but they held 7 celebrations throughout the world. And we here on the peninsula got to have the celebration. We did not have it on the 28th because Michelle was in France
Okay.
for that, and then he flew over, and we had it 10 days later,
Great.
right here. And so that was very, very special to have the big celebration.
Wow, that's really great.
And as I said, it was worldwide. Now there were the 3 that were done in France. One was at the museum. The other was in Paris, and that was the one attended by the President of France, which a lot of people did not know. And then the other one, I was trying to think where that was held. But anyway, there were all 3 right there in that area.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he came here. And now we have someone else's birthday to celebrate, which is your birthday.
Yeah. Same. Michelle Scoffier.
Yes.
That's really great, and that's such a prestigious honor, and we congratulate you what you do, and we congratulate all the disciples, and there's also some disciples here on the Monterey Peninsula.
And-
we congratulate.
And then we
them.
have the little Dames de
Oh,
Escoffier.
okay.
Now you want to know how that happened.
Okay.
Okay, so the reason that happened is when one of Michelle's father's chefs decided to come to the United States,
Yes.
and he went to work for a very prestigious family, what happened was that he decided to start a group of what they call Friends of Escoffier. And so this was a very, what I would say, prestigious organization, but they didn't have very many women in it. In fact, I think very few.
Okay.
And so the Les Dames d'Escoffier actually was started as a result of the Friends of Escoffier. And
Okay.
so here in this part, the Les Dames now is a very large organization nationwide, and they have their offices are in Louisville, Kentucky. And I would say that the really interesting part of it is that we started it here, and we have about 64 members here in this part.
Ladies.
Yes, ladies, because there are members here. They have one in San Diego. They have them in Dallas. They have them in New York. They're all over the world.
That's great.
So anyway, so there's been a lot of prestigious organizations that have come out of this, of the name, the Escoffier name.
That's very prestigious.
And so forth. And I was going to say that we might even go on to say that Julia was, of course, a disciple of Escoffier.
Julia Child.
Yes. And she was, I was going to say, she was, of course, known worldwide because she started out in France.
Yeah.
As you know. And her first meal, she was, in fact, we had Julia's birthday here and in the area, and we held it at not the Rio Grill, or was it the Rio Grill? No, it wasn't. It was the one in Monterey.
Oh, Montreal.
Montreal, that's
Okay.
right. And we had it there, and the night of her birthday, we ordered a croquembouche, of course, as her birthday cake.
What a pressure for the crew and the chefs
Yes.
at Montreal to say Julia Childs is coming for dinner. So,
Well,
wow.
she was deceased at this
Okay,
time.
yeah.
But what I'm saying is, so we were doing this birthday
Okay, yeah.
celebration. It was her 100th, I think it was. So I said, how can we really make this important? Well, the first thing Julia said was that she was so impressed with was the bread. The French bread that's laid on the table and everything.
Yeah.
So when we had everybody seated, we said, oh, something's missing. And we had the owner of Palermo Bakery.
Oh, yeah, Erasmo.
And he sang, he came out.
He's great. He's a
and they
soprano.
came out singing,
He's
and
a
all
great
of them
soprano.
carrying bread, and they laid the bread on the table to start the dinner.
Wow, that's
And
what
then-
a story,
and then-
yeah.
no, it was really so beautifully done, and something that, and then we served it all where everybody got their big pot of stew, and so forth, and it was just a great evening.
Now, you were a personal friend of Juliet. All you guys cooked
Yes.
together a few times.
Well,
Spent time together.
even I think important was in 1993 was the year she passed away, and Michelle came, and my husband, Michelle, and I drove down to visit her, and by that time she was in a wheelchair, and we had a lovely conversation with her. And the year before, she was supposed to have come for the Tomato Fest, and
Yeah, quite a lot.
and it was held out there, and she couldn't come because she hit her leg, and she never was well after that. So anyway, and I was supposed to have taken her around and everything, and we'd really prepared for her. So at the event, they put her on mic and broadcast it, and she spoke to the whole crowd
Wow, it's nice.
that day. And many people, I'm sure that if they see this, that might have been there when the wonderful Tomato Fests were going on.
That was a beautiful event.
Oh, those were beautiful events.
I wish they could keep bring that back.
Oh, I do too.
I think that was one of my favorites.
Well,
the best wine, the best food.
Well, you're absolutely correct. And in fact, I have to say that my inspiration for tomatoes is in one of my books, which we will be talking about.
You know what one of my favorite events is that's not here was the Masters of Food and Wines, the Highlands Inn.
Oh, yes, with David Fink.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, Julia was there
Yeah.
a number of times and taught.
I have a plate that says Masters. It's like, I got it hanging. I'm not going to use that plate, I just got it like on a little frame type thing. It's a beautiful, I think 1993 or something.
Oh, well, David Fink
Yeah.
was a master of that event, and he brought in so many famous people. And I mean, he brought Julia in. He brought all these people in.
Now I'm glad that they have the Pebble Beach Food and Wine. This nice event.
It's a nice event too.
That's great. But there's something about that Masters.
Oh, the Masters was
unbelievable.
Was the best ever.
Yeah.
Yes. So anyway.
So Mary, you have some books here you wrote, and this is the traveling soup kitchen, or
soup pot,
traveling soup pot.
Mm-hmm.
And how many soup recipes are in this?
Well, this originally had 197 soup recipes, and 26 countries I've traveled in.
Wow.
Now, when I only discovered this the other day, and I'm sharing this with you now because it meant a lot to me, in that in my book, one of the top chefs in the world recipe is in this book.
Wow.
And
Great.
he is a personal friend of mine. And I was going to say that I'm going to show you the picture of that because it's so special. And you find it in the, I have to get over here. I have a little thing here. It's Alan Wong's chilled red and yellow tomato soup.
Wow.
Now it's a chilled soup, and it's right here in the book.
Okay.
But I was shocked to find out that of the top 10 chefs in the world today, you will not believe this.
Yeah.
Do you know who the top richest chef is in the world today?
No. Oh.
Alan Wong.
Wow.
He's worth about 1.1 billion.
And
he's
that's
in
his
my
recipe.
book,
Yeah.
and I've known him, Alan personally, for many years. He started out on the Big Island in Hawaii, and then went on to go to the main island, of course, in Honolulu, and he opened a restaurant there, and he also owns restaurants all over the world, and he is the #1 wealthiest chef of all the chefs, and he's still to this day. But when I asked him for this recipe,
Yeah.
because I used to eat it all the time and it was so delicious, and he said, Mary, you can have this recipe, but only if you do not change one word.
Okay. Yeah.
And I said, Alan, I will not change one word of this recipe. And that is why it's in the book, and it's very special. Now, there's another chef that is in here that I was very close to, which is Thomas Keller,
Okay.
and he has the French Laundry.
Oh,
And-
in Napa.
Yes, and he's
That's
one of the
most prestigious restaurants.
yes, and he also I have followed his career and his life, and so there are all kinds of things in my books that are a result of knowing them and so forth. But what I would say is, if you were to take this soup book and pick out, say, recipes that I think are really unique,
Yeah.
here's one from Ireland. Now, if you look at it and you say, oh, well, it's chilled cucumber, what difference does it make? The thing about it is, here is a little village in Ireland that we were visiting, and they made this soup, and it was so delicious, and I brought back the recipe. These are not recipes that I've taken out of a book.
Yeah.
These are experiences. And
Oh,
that's
yeah,
what
yeah.
makes this book
Well,
so,
that makes it special.
that makes the book.
This is all experienced. You've had every soup.
Yeah, I've had every soup, and then I've come back. Now, here's another one. Brie and crab soup. Well, if you were to open this book, it's got Dakota's crab meat and brie soup,
Yeah.
which was made in New Orleans. But I've made it even simpler. If you want to make it the way they did, you have to start with the crab itself. This one, you already buy the crab in the containers, the
Okay.
fresh crab, and you don't have to work hard. So those are the kind of things that I did with this book. Now you have another one here. If I can get the right listing, I think. No, okay, well, anyway, it's the French onion soup.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, now, everybody loves onions, French
Oh,
onion
yeah.
soup. All right.
Yes. Yeah.
So right away, I'm gonna have to tell you that it's not what you think, the way it's made in this book. And after going to France, and I've eaten French onion soup in all the best places.
Yeah.
And this recipe is the best. Number one, not only do you saute a lot of onions, say 8 or 9 onions, all sliced nicely.
Okay.
Then you take and slice another onion, about 6 slices, and you burn them coal black in the skillet,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, black.
Coal black. They're burnt.
Okay.
And then you wrap it up in cheesecloth. Now when you're adding your broth for the French onion soup, you're not using beef stock,
No.
you're using chicken stock.
Okay, chicken stock.
All right, you're gonna
Secret.
pour that in. Now it's gonna cook those lovely onions that are all lovely and golden. And then you're gonna take that bag of those black burnt onions
Okay, yeah.
and drop it into the soup.
Oh, really? That does something.
I'm gonna tell you, when you eat this soup,
Yeah.
you think you're in heaven.
Okay.
But I'm just saying that you can take things like this that don't seem like much. So the one thing that I did with these books, and being a chef and being a cook, why do I have to buy a book and stick a brick in it to hold it open?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
So
That's why you got.
So the books may cost a little bit more, but it's spiral bound.
Spiral round, you could just flop it down.
You can open it
Yeah.
up, you can hold the book, and you don't have to be sitting there trying to keep the book
Can
open.
keep it open, yeah.
No, I mean, that was,
That's a great idea, yeah.
and then what I did is I have all of it labeled, so you can go, there's
Yeah.
recipes, but you can go to a section that you prefer and open it up and you have it.
There's a recipe in there that
Uh-huh.
I can't remember if I was watching a
Uh-huh.
podcast or something on the TV,
Uh-huh.
but Wendy Brody,
Uh-huh.
she raves about the salmon soup.
Oh, that's in this book?
Yeah.
Oh, I know that's
She said that it's not fishy, it's very delicate, and it's just superb.
I'm so glad you said that, because my other grandmother, that's why that soup is in there. My
Yeah.
grandmother, my great-grandmother was lady-in-waiting to the Queen of Sweden, which meant that they were cousins. But she ran off and got married and left and came to the United States. And that was her favorite thing, was salmon soup.
Salmon soup.
And so when I did this book, I had to honor her
Yeah.
by putting it into the northern European
Yeah,
section.
it doesn't taste fishy, is what.
No, it's
Wendy
right here,
said.
salmon soup. And it says, a special soup from Sweden. My great-grandmother was lady-in-waiting to the Queen of Sweden, and according to family lore, she ran off with a Laplander. Oh my goodness. Married him and came to the United States. She was famous for preparing Swedish smorgasbord. This soup is in her honor.
Oh, wow, that's nice.
Yeah. So there's a lot of,
It's like a lot of touching stories other than just.
there's
There's a reason for every
that
soup.
recipe is
Yeah,
here.
it's nice.
And having married my husband, which I know people think, well, so but it changed my life.
Yeah.
And when I had been over in Paris, I owned my company, and I decided to go over and spend 3 weeks at Cordon Bleu. So I flew over to Paris, and I had many years ago ran a program that brought 500 kids a year in from France, and one of the ladies said, if you ever come to Paris, you may stay with me. And I lived with her and went to Cordon Bleu for 3 months. And so I gathered up always a lot of recipes and a lot of information. But I was going to say that my husband wore a T-shirt when he proposed to me that said, "Marry me and fly free." And as a result of
TWA, right?
yeah, right. So as a result of that,
Perfect.
I had the perfect opportunity, and I took the time to do those things for my own experiences.
Yeah.
And that's why, even with this new book, the traveling cookbook
Yes.
that I just brought out, there's so many really fabulous recipes, but there's something in here to tell you that if you go to, let's say, what section do I have here? I have the Greek section, and I tell about Greece, and then I actually have a recipe in here for Greek lemon chicken.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to say that when we lived in Greece for 4 months on the Peloponnese, in a little village called Lemnidassos. Lemnidassos means lemon trees. And when I write about it, I'll just read a little something here that I write about, because it tells you a little bit about it. It says, "Sailing the islands on the deep blue seas of ancient Greece and the Peloponnese, I see thousands of 300 and 400-year-old olive trees and many secret stories to tell that will never be told. I see the village of Lemnidassos with thousands of lemon trees, their perfume permeating the air.
Wow.
I see the bottles of wines known as the blood of Hercules reverently displayed on the wine shops. I see the sun setting over the Acropolis from the top of the Athens Hilton, a sight for the eyes of every visitor. Then I find myself in the little tavernas throughout the small villages, serving delicious food, family recipes created of succulent olive oil, flavored vegetables, fish, and lamb dishes, oozing with the scent of lemon, followed by the creamiest yogurt and honey known to man.
I got goosebumps listening to that.
This is truly
great.
Greek cuisine.
Great. I mean, just the description there, and then to actually be eating that, or the soup.
No, but
it really feels good.
And it's kind of like taking the lemon and you cut it up and you cut up your chicken, and you marinate it. You let it sit for a day. Let it with all the herbs and everything, and it's the time that you take and the love to make it taste good. And if you go to something like, there's a recipe in here from Spain.
When you were going through the pages, I glanced, and I love lamb. I saw a lamb recipe on the front. A lamb recipe is really good.
This is this one is the roasted tenderloin of pork with apricot walnut dressing and a sauce d'albe. And then the one I was going to show you, I think, is this was it.
Okay.
This is the red snapper Baha Mar, and this is one of the most delicious recipes for fish done in a red sauce.
Okay.
Yeah. Normally you see, white sauce, lemon, everything. This is, you make the sauce, and then all you do is take it and put the sauce in a little baking dish, lay the fish in it, more sauce over the top, bake it in the oven, and it's done. And you've got a completely different flavor. And here's what I want to read to you about the man who created this sauce. And it's down here at the bottom. This man, his name was, I'm trying to see here, but
Spanish.
Yeah, it was a Spanish name. But he said, he took us out to the lobster tank This is in his little restaurant.
Okay.
And proceeded to explain the lobsters were the best in the world because they were happy and pleased in their surroundings. Yet you will notice, he said, that the bottom is laden with seashells and other little fish swimming around. The lobsters have very tender claws, and the shells make them comfortable as if they are in the ocean environment. Thus, this affects the flavor of the lobster meat.
That makes sense.
And the other thing he said,
That makes sense.
he said, he took us into, it said, after dinner, a rather interesting looking gentleman approached our table and asked if we would like to see his kitchen. It was the chef owner, Mr. Sanchez. Here it is. Never have I been in a restaurant kitchen that was genuinely gleaming in white tiles with everything in its place. He was so proud of his surroundings and began to show us how the fish flown in daily from the sea were placed on ice to protect freshness. So, I mean, that was the experience, and then to have the recipe. You see what I'm saying?
So you,
I know
it's like you're living the recipe, kind of.
Yeah,
The
it
story
is. But he was quite the human being.
I like when you were saying about the bound.
Yeah.
The way you could just lay it down. That's really.
No, it's true. Let's
I love
see.
it.
But anyway, you go through here and it sets the pace for every dish. Yeah, the Italian
cuisine.
Yeah, well, this one, I call this the roots of Italian cuisine. In my dreams, I recall the magnificent statue of David in Florence, the foot of Christ lovingly touched by millions of Christians in the Vatican, the welcoming Spanish steps in Rome, the Trevi fountain with its bubbling waters filled with coins holding visitors' wishes and dreams, the ancient walled city of Monteriggioni in Tuscany, housing the memories of Dante writing the Inferno. And then I awakened to the memories of flavorful Italian food. Having spent many months of my life traveling the routes of Italian cuisine, I share the following recipes with you.
Oh, fantastic.
So you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's placing you there, and then you can take these recipes.
It places you right there.
Yeah, it places you there. And that was the kind of thing that I found that I did with these books.
I think it's really good.
Yeah,
Nice.
it just isn't.
It's not just a cookbook. It's just there's a story.
There's a story,
and you've lived. Every of these soup recipes. You've had them. You've been to the different locations.
That's right.
Same thing here.
Yeah.
So
and
it's
then
really great.
I think the other beautiful part about it is the plane.
Yeah.
Because when we decided to do the traveling, this is the old Ford Trimotor, and we used it again. This one is carrying my cookbook over the wing, and this one was carrying the soup pot.
Cool.
But that was the first plane that went from New York to Los Angeles in 48 hours. But you did the train to Ohio, then you got on the plane and went to Kansas City.
Okay.
Got in Kansas City, you got back on the train and went to New Mexico. In New Mexico, you got back on the plane and then landed in LA, and that was coast to coast in 48 hours. So, anyway.
Now, this book here with your late husband, Roy Chamberlain, Captain Roy Chamberlain, TWA pilot. Was this a tribute to Roy, or what?
Well, let me tell you about it. It has his wings, his Air Force wings. Yeah. He was in the
Looks like you have wings.
I wear his wings every day, everywhere I go. They're right here. I always wear them.
Great.
And
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, so this is a command pilot wings. He was in the first Air Force pilots class. He went in 1947 and graduated as the first pilot class in 1948. And then after serving in the Air Force, he was hired by TWA, and he was 34 years and retired as their chief pilot. And then he was home about a year, and then NASA hired him as their senior aviation safety analyst. And when he was dying of cancer, he said to me, "Mary, I haven't finished my book.
Okay.
I'm begging you to finish my book." And I said, "I promise you I will do your book."
Nice.
And so what happened was, I called his secretary at NASA, and she was a very good typist. And I said, "Please come." And she spent a month at the house and typed up all of the information that he had in his computer. And then I started putting it together. His brother, George, is also an airline captain. And I have the book at the Air Force Museum in Dayton. I have it at the Air Force Academy Library in Colorado Springs. I have it at the, I have it in Washington, D.C. I have it at the new TWA Hotel in New York,
Okay.
at the airport. And then, of course, you know.
Quite a tribute to the captain.
Yeah, it's a wonderful tribute. And he bailed out of a plane in 1949 that crashed. And the
Okay.
pilot and the co-pilot were killed. It was a big bomber ferrying another airplane.
Okay.
And he was the last one out. He jumped out of the back, and the plane crashed under him, and the pilot and co-pilot were killed. And that was the part that changed his life, because he said he would dedicate his life to aviation safety. And if you'll notice, that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, now it's parachute.
Yeah, so ironically, we did a bailout party with his parachute up at Woody's.
Okay.
Okay, so I took it up there and we strung
You strung it up.
we strung it up and had his hats up there and everything, and made a display, and we collected money for the Rancho Cielo for
Okay, yes.
their program.
Yes, it was a fundraiser.
So, and anyway, it was a marvelous evening, and I told the story of his bailout. Well, next day, I go back to get the parachute and all the stuff I'd left there, and they said, "Is there any chance you could leave it here?"
Oh.
He said, "Everybody has been remarking about it, and the
Oh, yeah,
pilots
because you're
are
out.
enjoying it."
You're at Woody's. You're at the airport.
You're at the
Woody's
airport, you're looking out,
It's perfect. Yeah.
it's there.
Oh, it's still there now.
It's there now, and here's the good story.
Is the display there too?
The
other-
display, and then Bob
I
Wecker.
think that's great that it's there.
Bob
Because that
Wecker.
way people can see.
Yeah, he wrote the story, and it's
Yeah.
all up there. It couldn't be more special.
That is really great.
And
Mary.
you know what? It's not going to waste. Why
No.
should it sit in a box?
Why should it sit in a box so
In the
people
garage.
can view it?
Because you know, it's the parachute was manufactured in 1944, and it's he jumped out of the plane in 49. So I
Yeah.
mean, it's an old piece of
Wow.
parachute.
That is really great. And
So anyway, there it is out there. If anybody wants to go out to Woody's,
Woody's on the airport.
and they can see the whole story of the bailout.
Mary, so how does someone get these books? I mean, do you have a website or how does
I do have a website. You know, you can't just call and order it online. You know, whatever you have to do.
Yeah.
I have it's MaryChamberlinCookbooks.com,
Okay.
and you can order it that way. You can also call me.
Okay.
I don't mind giving out my phone number.
Okay.
It's 831-624-0830.
Okay.
They can call me and say, I would like to have a book. And they can either come by and pick it up, or I can mail it to them and sign it over to them.
Okay, I think that's great. And if somebody forgets, whatever, contact me on Buzzing with Cousin. I'll contact Mary, and we'll get these books out to you. Mary, this is really, I mean, we could go on another another hour and a half.
Oh, we could really
Probably.
get into these recipes.
I mean, we could get it, but I really appreciate you, joining me and telling your fascinating stories about your life, and the food is just something else.
It's good food.
It's good food, and what you do with the escoffier. So Mary, I appreciate it. Is there anything you'd like to say before we let you go? Or?
Well, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to tell my story.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
And this is very special for me too.
Special for me too.
Yes.
Mary,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's great, and we might have to go do part 2.
We might have to do part 2, yes.
But anyway, we're going to end this show. Thank you all listeners for listening to this fabulous lady here, and we want to close by saying bon appetit.
Bon appetit.
Looks pretty good.